Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited today to be here with CEO, leader, and author, Alan Morris. Alan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to connect with us here on the Reclamation Podcast.
Hey, it's great to be with you today.
I wanted to start, I like to jump right into things. And I was looking at your hobby list and it's ridiculous in the best way possible. And it says that you're a pilot, 4th degree black belt, scuba diver, hunter. And so I want to start with a really hard question. If you could only do one of your hobbies for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think it would be flying.
Okay.
I've loved flying since I was a college student, got my private pilot's license in the Georgia Tech Flying Club. And now I fly jets at 45,000 feet. So it's been a beautiful experience. There's something exhilarating about the freedom of flight.
Yeah. So I'm in Dayton, Ohio, the birthplace of aviation. Regardless of what anybody from North Carolina says, it all starts here. They just had good wind. And so if you've never been to the National Museum of the United States Air Force, you should definitely come check it out. It is an aviator's dream.
I would love to go there. I've always wanted to see the Wright brothers bicycle shop and where they formulated their idea for their first flying machine.
It's a beautiful space. Yeah, it really is. One of the things that's super interesting is with this new book, All In, as it comes out, you're really sharing your heart in a way that most people don't do. And so I'm curious, what was the writing process like for you? And what did it teach you kind of about yourself along the way?
Well, I think the writing process turned out to be a lot like the journey that I have been on with the group of men in my YPO, Young Presidents Organization, forum for 26 years. And we began this journey together over 26 years ago, a group of 8 of us, and we have found ourselves in a constant process of taking one layer deeper look at the truth about ourselves and our relationships and why we do what we do, which is not the thing you typically hear CEOs talk about. It's more than just, pushing earnings for the quarter. It's more than just gaining market share. It's more than creating the best product in the marketplace. It's also about your personal life, because in many ways, the journey of your personal life is reflected in your business and your career. And what I found in writing the book was it was really just recounting the truth about the things I discovered about myself and the truth these other men discovered about themselves that they wanted to share.
I love that. I think one of the things that's interesting is, as I hear you talk, I'm in absolute agreement that your personal life really reflects your business. But I would be remiss if I didn't also say, like, business also matters too, right? You guys are all CEOs. And so you have people that you have to report to. And I'm sure that our people who are listening, they all have bosses. How do we live in the tension of we need to perform and also the tension of we need to have a good life?
Well, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful question. And I think it's a question I have to keep asking myself every day, because every day we face new challenges in life and we have to face that tension of achieving balance between caring for the needs of our family, caring for the needs of our spouse, taking care of ourselves personally. In other words, can I give myself permission to be kind to myself in the midst of the extreme intensity of running a business in a competitive business environment with all the catastrophes and crises that come up in business, in the business world, in the economy, like we're facing now. The world economy is going through stress and change. And because of that, a lot of people don't realize the stress that they're under. And so they are medicating themselves. There was an article in Bloomberg just this morning about a spike in alcoholism for people that have been coming through COVID and all the stress of COVID, and now we're watching Russia invade Ukraine, and how that's affecting oil prices, how that's affecting inflation, how it's caused a drop in the stock market in the United States, and all kinds of other international tensions. Well, we can live in that space and then medicate ourselves by popping another pill or having another drink. Or we can say, what am I about? What's going on with me? Am I feeding myself too much on the television? Am I feeding myself too much on CNN and Fox News and Bloomberg and BBC and MSNBC and all these things? Well, we have to be informed, but I think we have to be careful about how far we go with that, and to be aware of the effect it has on us.
My listeners know how much I love the idea of living one day at a time. And that's super important for as a coping mechanism in my life. We also talk about disciplines a lot here. And we say that if you aren't dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions. And
Beautifully said.
I'm curious, what are some of the things that you do on a daily basis to keep yourself in that right mental space so you can lead not just your companies, but also yourself and your family?
Well, that's a really good question. What are the disciplines that I use on a daily basis is very similar to most of the men that are in our retreats and forums, and that are on this journey of going all into their own lives. And one of them, I think the first one, is to constantly ask ourselves the question, number one, what am I feeling right now? I grew up without any particular value on my feelings. I grew up, my father was a captain in the Navy. And so the CEO running his own business. And because of that, I grew up with a focus on what am I going to achieve, when am I going to achieve it, and how am I going to succeed? And so there's little room in there to be aware of your feelings. It's about achievements. And over the course of my life, and as I became a CEO and president of my company, and took on more and more responsibilities and more community duties, responsibilities in my church and in my community, as well as in my businesses, I discovered I had become more of a human doing than a human being.
Sure.
And frankly, disconnected from what I was feeling. So the first discipline of the disciplines that are important to me are for me to stop and ask myself, what am I feeling? And why am I feeling that? And to just start being more self-aware as the first.
If somebody has no experience with that, I mean, there's probably somebody listening right now who's like, I want to be more self-aware too, Alan. And what's the practical first step? Like, what's the one thing that they can do right now if they pulled their car over or stopped running or, stopped mowing their grass while they're listening? If they could just stop for a second to become more self-aware, what's really the first practical thing?
Practical thing. I'll just admit, I was a hopeless. My coach was about to give up on me. We would sit in a circle of men at a retreat, and he would ask, what are you feeling right now, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? And I was like a deer in headlights. I could tell you what I thought. I could tell you what I believed. I could tell you what my convictions were. And by the way, feelings are for women and children. They're not important, and they're changeable. So the only thing that matters is what you're committed to, what your convictions and beliefs are, and what you're going to do. And I made a 180-degree turn on that. And the reason is, he said, okay, look, Alan, I want you to write down on a 3x5 card here 6 feelings: mad, glad, sad, tender, excited, or scared. And I carry this card around in your pocket and pull it out of your pocket 100 times a day and look at it and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And frankly, It was a revelation to me. Okay, so maybe I only pulled it out 10 times a day,
Sure.
but I'd look at that thing and I'd have to think, which one of those six feelings do I feel? And more often than not, I'd find that I was feeling in the midst of having a great public image of go, cheerleader, total self confidence, um, feeling anxious, worried, frustrated, concerned. All those words go in the fear category.
Mm.
I was, I would never admit to myself that I was afraid or that I was fearful. I mean, I did a life of things that proved how unafraid I was. But the truth of the matter was, down deep inside, I carried a lot of fear, anxiety about the business, about what's happening with this employee and this employee or this customer, or what's happening in the city or what's happening in the nation, or my concern about politics or my concern about military issues or international issues. So I was concerned about a lot of concerned about trying to understand my wife, trying to understand my kids. And all those things are fears that we can end up carrying and not even be aware that we're carrying those fears. So just by writing down a simple list of feelings, pulling it out and look and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Has been a great start for me. And I still do that. I don't have to carry the card, but I still do it.
Oh, well, what I love about that is it creates a baseline of language that you can really begin to like, because I think most people get a little overwhelmed with the feeling talk, and it's the words that scare us that we're
Yeah.
supposed to be something that we're not. And yet, what I like about this approach is that you could just take, hey, just take six basic words, like three of them all rhyme, and and then just carry it with you. And when you're unsure of what's going on inside of you, kind of that self-examination, which is clearly a big part of wisdom, taking the time for self-examination, then it kind of comes out. How far along were you in your career when you decided to get a coach and really start diving into some of this stuff?
Well, let's see. It was about 22 years ago. And so I was about, let's see, I was about 48 years old. And I had been president of my company for, let's see, 20 years.
Yeah.
So I've been a CEO for 20 years. And so this was not a new thing. I felt very confident to run my business. And, was involved in leadership in the community on the Orange Bowl Committee and the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce and the United Way and all these other things in the community, as well as on the board of my church. Doing good things and building a business and expanding it around Florida and Georgia. But I got to a certain point where I realized I had hit a wall, and that got my attention.
Yeah. In your book, you write at the age of 47, my little kingdom was crumbling. I was wondering if you could tell us about that moment, about kind of what was happening in your heart then. At this point in time, you already, like you said, had run your real estate development kind of enterprise for 20 years. I mean, from all
Yeah.
accounts, you were wildly successful. And I love the language. My little kingdom was crumbling. Can you tell us about that moment?
Yeah, we had the largest commercial real estate brokerage company in the state of Florida, and probably the largest developer of office buildings in the state of Florida. So it was a pretty serious business. And now we've expanded far beyond office buildings, but that's another story. But at that time, I was having trouble with particularly one of my kids. I love my kids dearly.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my kids was acting out and got suspended from school. And I told her that if she got in trouble one more time, that was going to be the last straw. She's going to have to go away to boarding school.
Oh, wow.
And because the stress on my wife was more than she could handle. And so I put her in a boarding school up in Long Island, New York. And after one semester, she got expelled from that school. And then I put her in a kind of a really tough emotional lockdown school up in northern Vermont. And at the same time, my wife was going through a lot of difficulties I couldn't understand. She would lock herself in and cry when I was not home, and I'd hear about it kind of sideways. I'd find out about it. And, I had conflict going on between two of the senior officers in my company. And I was kind of walking on eggshells around them. Why would I be walking on eggshells around two other guys when I own the company and I'm the president of the company? It's
Right.
embarrassing. But that was the truth. I mean, that's the embarrassing truth. And so I had all these different things going on, and driving, 2 weeks after dropping off my daughter in school in Vermont, I started having some really bad headaches. I mean, really severe headaches. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning with a severe headache and take my Excedrin. 4 hours later, I take another 2 Excedrin. 4 hours later, another 2 Excedrin, and on through the day. And then take my Excedrin and go to bed. Wake up at 2 in the morning, take my Excedrin, and then wake up at 6 in the morning with a splitting headache. So I knew that something was seriously wrong. So I went to the head of neurosurgery at my hospital, and he interviewed me, and he said, "Well, Alan, I'll tell you right now, with those symptoms, you've got a brain tumor. Let's do the MRI and let's see where your tumor is, and then we'll know what our options are." And I thought, okay, well, I can deal with anything. And, if God wants me to go, then, if this is the way I go, then it's out of my control. But let's see what the options are. So it took him 3 weeks to go through the process of the MRI, get scheduled, and then come back and do a CAT scan because the MRI wasn't conclusive. And then he came back in and he told me after the CAT scan, he said, "Look, Alan, I've examined the films myself, and your tumor is not there." And I said, "Well, Doc, why are you calling it my tumor?" He said, "Well, I can give you pain medication, I can give you beta blockers, I can give you muscle relaxants, but and that'll get the pain under control." I said, "You're kidding. Is that the best you got? I mean, you don't know what's causing it. You're sure that it's not a physical problem, and you're going to give me this to mask the pain?" I said, That's all I know to do." So, okay, well, I'm going to get serious. I got to get to the bottom of this, because what this is telling me, if there's no physical cause, I must be causing this myself. And so I decided to take it seriously, because I was really looking down the barrel of a gun here, thinking that I only had months to live, and what would happen to my company, what would happen to my family, if I dropped dead of a brain tumor. So I thought, how about if I step out of the company and give this my full-time attention? I ended up hiring a former executive to back in and run the company for me for 3 months while I took a sabbatical for 3 months. And I hired a counselor and an executive coach to help me work through and discover what was going on that was causing these headaches. And that was how it all began. And the 3 months turned into 3 amazing years, my sabbatical.
Wow.
And I ended up managing the company more as a chairman rather than a CEO. But for the most part, I stayed out of the office and dove deeply into my journey. And it was a journey of great, exciting discovery and sometimes painful discovery. But that was how it started.
I'm wondering if you could tell me about the moment when you decided to extend that sabbatical from 3 months to 3 years, or like, I think there are a lot of people in their journey right now who are listening to this, and they feel like the winds of change may be blowing, and they started out on a path, but now God is moving them in a new direction. How did you know that this was the right move? How did you hear God so clearly in that? What was that moment like when you went to your, I mean, you have people you're accountable to. You're the CEO, but there's people there. There's a lot of people depending on you. You know, when you
Yeah.
go to tell them, hey, I think I'm just going to keep not coming into work.
Well, I gave the fellow I hired the authority as the managing director of the company to run things, and I would show up once a week or so, and so people would see that I was still alive and healthy and smiling, uh, and I had to go in to make critical decisions that needed to be made. Um, but uh, but taking myself out of the routine, notifying all the community organizations and my church that I had to step out for a time, that I wasn't going to be available to serve on this board or this committee, and so it gave me a kind of freedom that I had never given myself permission
Hmm.
to have, and I didn't realize that freedom was more just a political idea. It's a powerful spiritual concept.
Yeah.
In Galatians 5:1 in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul writes, "For it is for freedom that Christ has set us free."
Hmm.
You know, we think so much about I find myself thinking so much about my duty to God, or doing good, or doing the right thing, or being accountable to God ultimately, that sometimes I forget that God wants our freedom. And it is for that freedom is a goal in and of itself in God's economy. For it is for freedom that Christ has set us free, and
Hmm.
that He doesn't want us to continue to enslave ourselves by our rules that are not His rules, and with our guilt and shame that we carry around, that He wants to forgive us from and give us freedom from. So was probably one of the first revelations, and my taste of freedom during that time made me hunger for more. I wanted to know how to just enjoy life again instead of just being a hard driving taskmaster of myself mostly, but also of everyone around me.
So you work with leaders all over the globe, and you do retreats and you help them find this freedom. But I would imagine there's a fair amount of people that you're coaching or that your team is coaching, and they can't afford to take 3 years off work.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very, very rare
Right.
thing.
Right.
And
How do we start the journey to freedom in the spaces that are given to us today?
well, I'll tell you the ways that have been most helpful to me, that are doable, that are simple, and that for me were a revelation, is what my counselor said to me after about 3 months. He said, "Alan, would you do anything I ask you to do?" I said, "Well, I don't know about that, but I tell you what, I'll think about it overnight, and I'll come back." And I did, and I said, I figured if he asked me to do something really ridiculous, I could just fire him. But
Right.
he said, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to AA meetings.
Mm.
I want you to go to 60 meetings in 60 days." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me." And he said, "I'm deadly serious." I said, "But I'm not an alcoholic. Why would I go to AA meetings?" And he said, "Because God is there." I
Mm.
said, "Oh, this is great. Here I am, an elder in my church. I've directed a Christian ministry in addition to running my business. I run a charitable foundation that supports Christian ministries. In a book on Christian apologetics, and I got to go to an AA meeting because God is there." He said, "Yeah."
Mm.
So I said, "Wow." And then I thought, well, what do I do if somebody recognizes me at an AA meeting? I mean, I'm a kind of a well-known guy in my little community. I'm like being a big fish in a little pond, and am I going to go in there with the dregs of society and are they going to think I'm an alcoholic and all that? I had all these. That's really the truth about what I was afraid of. I was afraid of my image.
Yeah.
I was afraid of my reputation, and I ended up going with a group of the guys in my forum group who decided they'd go with me to support me, and it was an astonishing experience. We heard people share. Nobody had a persona. Nobody was trying to fix anybody else. Nobody was telling you how great they were. They were telling you the truth about the pain in their lives.
Yeah.
About how they had screwed up their lives. And it was in a circle of what I would call a circle of grace, where nobody was judging anybody, but people were being brutally vulnerable, authentic, and honest about the pain that they had caused themselves and the pain that they had caused those around them. And I was just flabbergasted. I had never seen anything like that, and certainly any business group I was in, or certainly in any church group that I was in, that level of honesty. And then I discovered Al-Anon, which is family and friends of alcoholics. And they are in the same kind of 12-step recovery process from themselves, being enabler of the addict that they love. And I said, wow, I really relate to that group even more. So I ended up going to AA and Al-Anon meetings. And, you can pay $300 an hour for a really good psychologist, or you can pay $1 an hour and go to an AA meeting and get about the same result. So I kind of like the economics of paying $1 to go to an AA meeting or an Al-Anon meeting, and just sitting there quietly and listening and journaling my thoughts and writing down what is that I'm feeling right now. What am I becoming aware of about myself as I listen to these other dear, honest, authentic people tell their stories? And that began opening a whole door of self-awareness in my own life. And I ended up going not just for 60 days, but for many years.
Yeah. One of the things that I love that people say at the end of 12-step meetings is keep coming back. It works if you work it.
Yeah. Keep coming back. It works if you work it.
And it's the mindset that you're talking about when you're kind of talking about going all in, right? Like, it's just like, hey, show up, do the little things every day, and decide where your priorities are. And that kind of leads me to my next question. How, in the midst of this transformational journey, did you shift your priorities? I mean, because obviously, you created some margin, which I think is important. We all need margin. You found some people to help you, and then you committed yourself to a lifestyle that was different from what was. So all of that had to change the way you see the world. What did those new priorities look like for you? And then how did you express it to your wife, June? I'm curious, because my wife would think I was crazy.
Well, first I'll just say that the process was a process of stages. It's not like flipping a light switch. Some people like to describe it as peeling an onion. You peel the onion and you see this beautiful onion, nicely peeled, and you realize, hey, I've done it. And then discover, well, there's another layer. And so you start cutting off that other layer, and you get that layer off of the onion, and you discover it looks great, but wait, there's another layer. And there's layer upon layer upon layer of going into the truth about yourself and seeing more and more truths about yourself. Oftentimes hurtful and self-defeating behaviors that we carry on in our lives, whether it's in AA, maybe it's drinking, or NA, maybe it's Narcotics Anonymous, maybe it's drugs or prescriptions, or whether it's SA with Sex Addicts Anonymous. We all have different ways of medicating ourselves. So that's one of the places I think to start, is realize that there's a journey of layers of discovery, and the layers are terrific. And with each layer, you realize that you're not exactly the person you thought you were, and you can have more compassion and empathy for the weaknesses and foibles of others around you when you realize, hey, wait a minute, mine are just a little different. So we work so hard on maintaining our persona that what happens is when we become less about our persona, less about our public image, less about defending ourselves, and more about being open and curious about what more we need to see about ourselves. I think it makes us easier to live with, and my children tell me it's made me more approachable than I was before for better relationships with them, as well as the people that I work with, and the men in my group who are very quick to observe when I'm believing my own PR.
Yeah, no, I've got some friends like that too. Little humility partners is what I call them.
Yes.
I'm from a Wesleyan tradition, so we have a band meeting, and there's a pastor that I get together with every week, and we confess sins to each other. And
Yes.
it's an old Wesleyan practice, and there's nothing more humbling than going in and telling another human all of your mistakes or the areas where you're struggling the most. And so it sounds a lot like the journey that you've been on.
Yes. That's a great discipline right there. It really helps you get and stay centered. And one of the things that we do in our monthly forum meetings with our men is we have a thing called a clearing, where when we start the meeting, we reaffirm absolute confidentiality, and then and we check in with what we're feeling, and that's one of the ways we become aware of not just what the other men are feeling, but we become aware of what is it we're feeling ourselves, by checking in with what we're feeling. And then we do what's called a clearing, where we look each man in the eye and say, I feel clean and clear with you. And we go around the circle and we say, there's something that bothered me last week, but maybe it's, I called you and you didn't return my phone call, or I sent you a text message. It was really important. I never heard from you. And I feel, I'm ticked off about that. I don't like that. And I felt like you were too busy for me, or whatever it is you felt, to show up with that, even though it seems like a little nitpicky, maybe even seem like a childish little grievance. Because what happens is we carry these little childish grievances and nitpicky irritations around inside of us. And because of that, it subconsciously affects our relationship with that other person. And what I find when I do a clearing with somebody over something that may seem very minor, I discover, wow, I have more feelings inside about this than I thought I did. And the other man honors me by listening to the facts and the feelings and the judgments and what do I want around that, without giving any explanation, without giving any justification or defensiveness, just honoring me by listening fully. And that's a great gift to give to one another. So that's one of the things along the journey, when you ask, well, how do you go through this? Well, these are different elements of it. Being in a circle of grace, being in a forum with others, going to some place like AA or Al-Anon, and speaking truth in a vulnerable way in a safe container with other men.
So you've got lots of years of experience in community. It's clearly a major part of your story. Even in just the short time that we've been talking today, you've probably mentioned your community almost more than anything else, between your YPO group or the retreats or the 12-step meetings. I imagine there's somebody listening right now who is not in an intentional community. And I was wondering if you could take your years of wisdom and tell them why they should get into an intentional community that helps them grow as a human.
Well, I think probably Harville Hendricks, the counselor, said it best when he said, that we are made to be in relationship,
Mm,
and we are injured in relationship, and we are healed in relationship.
wow.
And that's where we will find the healing that we need to be the whole people, the wholehearted people that God made us to be. And that I think that um, that is the gift that we have and that we can give to ourselves, to be in relationship, really not casual relationship, but intimate relationship with others. That's where the healing takes place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I know my audience. I know that they are praying people. And as this book begins to kind of find its way out into the wilderness, there I would love for them to know how to pray for you and how to pray for this book as it goes into the world.
Well, thank you. My hope is very simple, and that is that God would use this book to bless and heal the lives of many, many, many men.
Hmm.
100% of the proceeds from the sale of this book go straight back into the All In Foundation, charitable foundation. Nobody makes any profits off of this book. It
Hmm.
all goes in to help create men's groups and to help sponsor uh, people in ministry or otherwise who cannot afford to come to a retreat, where we can scholarship people into retreats and into forums. And I was working really hard to build a retreat center, and I'm a real estate developer. I'm a builder, and I was at every possible roadblock with building this retreat center in South Florida. And my wife said to me one day, why are you working so hard to build this retreat center to help hundreds of men when you could write a book that may help millions of men?"
Hmm.
And all I could say was, duh. Of course, all the wisdom comes from my
Sure.
wife and her insights watching me unsuccessfully try to get this retreat center built. And so I had some of you may know, one of my mentors was a man by the name of Dr. Bill Bright, who founded a nonprofit Christian ministry called, at the time, Campus Crusade for Christ, and now
Yeah.
it's called Cru. And I worked as his assistant at one time, and he was like a mentor, like an uncle to me for many years. And when he was diagnosed with a terminal illness, he asked me to come spend time in Orlando, and I spent the weekend with him. And I shared with him my new journey, why I had taken a sabbatical from everything I was doing. And he said, "Alan, you've got to write a book about this. This would help so many men." Well, that was November of 2000.
Wow.
I spent the last 20 years thinking about it. I said, "Bill, I couldn't even write the preface to a book. I'm trying to figure it out myself." Well, I've spent 20 years now figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and so when COVID came, I said, "Well, I guess this is the gift of the time to write the book."
Yeah.
And so I just tried to be as authentic and as honest and as helpful and direct as I could, so that it could be a very practical help to men who may feel stuck or may feel like they don't have the joy in their lives that they want, or they don't have the freedom in their lives that they want. And because I felt stuck, and I felt like I had lost my joy, and I felt like I had lost my vision and my mission for both my business and my life. And so this is what I wanted to share in the book, and I would just be so grateful for people's prayers that that this book would find its way into the hands of as many people as possible, that it could encourage and help them in their journey,
That's beautiful.
help them get their lives back.
Yeah, that's good. It's real good. Okay, I have one more question for you. But before I ask it, I always know that my listeners are going to want to connect with you on the interwebs. Where is the best place to learn all about Alan Morris and what he's doing in the world?
Great. Well, the website for the book and what we're calling All In Leaders Ministry is allinbook.com. ALLINBOOK.com. It's as simple as that. Inbook.com. And that'll lead you to the information about the book, my bio, and then as we have future resources, we're going to have online courses that'll be available. In 2 weeks, we're going to be filming a webinar series so that people can go online and get a lot of free resources. When they buy the book, they can also get free resources online that the book launches them into with a website in the book. So the book will be out. It'll be distributed by Simon and Schuster on May 3rd. So it's about less than 2 months away from now. And so if you order the book now, which you can do at allinbook.com, you'll have access to all those resources.
That's awesome. Love it. Now you yourself aren't really super active on any particular social media personally?
All the information about the book will be on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, and so I have my web pages there. And if you're curious about the Alan Morris Company to know who we are, who I am from a business standpoint, that's on there on the internet as well. AlanMorris.com.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay, last question I always love to ask people. It's an advice question. Except I get to name I'm going to ask you to give yourself a piece of advice, except I get to name the day and the time. And so what I would love to do is to take you back to the end of your very first day as the CEO of this company. So you just finished a long, hard day at work. It probably never actually ended. You probably just drifted off into sleep, knowing your personality a little bit after spending some time with you. If you could sit across from that young man, sit knee to knee with him and look him in the eyes, what's the one thing that you want to tell him?
Alan, you can be kind to yourself. And whatever you do with your business, and whatever you do with your service in the community or your service for Christ, do it with kindness towards yourself. You don't have to kill yourself to please God. And I think I found myself probably not knowing when to quit, because I always felt like I must do the next thing and then must do the next thing.
Amen. Amen. That's a really good word to end on. Alan, thank you so much for your generosity today, for your time, for your vulnerability. It's so much fun getting to hear your story, and I can't wait to see what God does with this book.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be with you on the Reclamation Podcast today.